You thought pineapple on pizza was gross? You've clearly never tried wall chicken and tiny mushroom on pizza before. Of all the tropes that gaming has had since the earliest days, power-ups have been some of the most prevalent for quite some time. Whether they be stat boosts to make you stronger, new weapons to mow down mooks with, or fun toys to play around with, power-ups are always a nice thing to have around. Unfortunately, among the plethora of fun and useful power-ups, there have been quite a number of them that completely and utterly malfunction. Whether they be useless, clunky, or obnoxious, these are the power-ups that are better off locked away in their chests. Also, for the record, I'm not including joke items, handicaps, or power downs, just items that are advertised as being beneficial. With that out of the way, stock up your wallet and grab your best equipment because it's time to ignite my flames! Cave Story is hands down one of my favorite indie games in recent memory, and the weapons played a huge part in my enjoyment of the game. Blasting away at monsters, enemies, and whatever else the game throws at me is just pure joy. However, there always has to be a rough in the diamond, and in this case, the Nemesis is that rough. Being a late game pickup, you would expect a weapon with a name as frightening as Nemesis to be an absolute beast and utterly decimate all opposing forces. And guess what? It actually can! At level 1. Easily the biggest issue with this weapon has to be the obnoxious and awkward gimmick implemented into it. See, in Cave Story, each weapon can level up from 1 to 3, and as you would expect, higher levels make weapons more powerful and useful, with some of the level 3 weapons being absolutely broken. The Nemesis is the exception to this trend, getting weaker as it levels up until the thing blasts out rubber ducks. Hey, I thought I was in a cave, not a bathtub! Making matters worse is that this weapon immediately levels up after 1 experience point, essentially turning it into too much of an unnecessary handicap if you want it at full power. Now, I'll give credit to Daisuke and Maya for trying to be creative, but I'm sorry, creative does not equal good, and this is an excellent example of creativity gone horribly wrong. Long story short, the only one this Nemesis haunts would be the person wielding it. I'll take my King's Blade back, thank you very much. I'll be honest, I really didn't care much for Shovel Knight. While the game is by no means bad, it is nowhere near deserving of the critical acclaim the title has received since its release. The mobile gear obtained in Tinker Knight stage does not help to improve my opinion on the game in the slightest. Compared to some of the other admittedly fun and cool gadgets in the game, the mobile gear honestly comes off as rather lacking. For starters, the weapon has a rather slow wind-up time before it activates, which, while not unbearably sluggish, is still rather noticeable and annoying. Secondly, the machine is really awkward regarding platforming given how fast and jumpy the thing is. The weapon jumps over small obstacles to supposedly make traversing more dangerous areas safer, but it really just makes the mobile gear slippery and unwieldy to ride on. To be fair though, as an attack, the mobile gear does prove to be somewhat useful and even knocks out Tinker Knight's first phase in one hit, so that saves this otherwise broken wind-up toy from being any higher. Still, out of all the relics Shovel Knight journeys across throughout his legendary campaign and outing, the mobile gear definitely rusts among them as one of the poorest. Ocarina of Time. Quite possibly one of the greatest games of all time. From the deep and engrossing story, to the plethora of enjoyable characters, and the amazing gameplay, thanks in part to the fun and useful power-ups and tools, this game is certainly deserving of all of the praise it gets. Unfortunately, even the most acclaimed and adored of titles have their flaws, and in this case, the Giant's Knife is certainly among them. Advertised as an all-powerful blade rivaling even the Master Sword, and having taken 7 whole years to forge, the Giant's Knife initially seems like it should be an amazing weapon, now shouldn't it? However, as it turns out, this legendary blade turns out to be nothing but a scam, as in a few hits, this knife will come face to face with the sharpener and snap apart in the blink of an eye. Now, weapon durability on its own doesn't inherently make a weapon bad, but this weapon has so few uses compared to the infinite ammo of the other swords that it comes off as completely inferior. Especially considering a side quest in the game also allows the player to obtain the figurine sword, which essentially serves as an unbreakable version of the Giant's Knife, rendering the latter completely dull and void. Maybe this knife should go back to chopping up apples again. Better hurry before the nearby oranges can warn them. Mario Kart can be quite a hectic ride for some people, and part of that comes from the various items that the players can pick up throughout the many tracks. Some of these weapons can be outright broken and salt-inducing, such as the likes of Bullet Bill, Lightning, and the ever so infamous blue shells. However, we're here to talk about the opposite extreme, and easily the most ineffective one, though, would have to be the banana peel. Why does this exist? Just why does this thing even exist? What purpose could this power-up possibly achieve that no other item in the game can arguably do better? All 3 colors of shells do a better job at knocking down opponents, fake item blocks are more hazardous obstacles, and pretty much every other item in the game gives the player more of an overall advantage. The banana peel, on the other hand, pretty much serves as a minor inconvenience to anyone that happens to spot it. It is laughably easy to spot and dodge, and even if it does hit someone, it only stops them in their tracks for about 2 seconds at most. If you think this makes for an effective shield, you can swap your mine cartridge out for a better cart because the banana peel as a shield is about as effective as an actual banana would be as a real shield. Finally, don't even bother trying to foolishly and pitifully toss the thing right in front of you, as that would more than likely just result in you running straight into your own item, wasting an already pathetic weapon even more. Even if you were deliberately aiming for last place, there would have to be far better solutions than just smashing into bananas, and again, only stopping for maybe a second or two. First apples and oranges, now bananas. Man, I'm really in the mood for some fruit salad right about now. So, you guys won't judge me for talking about Minecraft, right? Right? Okay then. In that case, let me explain why the hoe is such a pointless, ineffective, pathetic, lackluster, and overall awful weapon for this game! Seriously? Again? Alright guys, let me state my case now. Now, the hoe admittedly has a unique use in which it can be used to plant crops to make healing items, but overall, the hoe is by far the weakest of the game's default weapons. Besides serving the least helpful non-combative use in the game, as a weapon, the hoe is absolutely worthless. Considering the weapon does completely minimal damage, the same amount as simply punching a foe no less, using it as a means of defense is pretty much useless. Oh, and if you think you can try to make an OP build out of this joke, don't bother, as the hoe is one of only 2 weapons that cannot be enchanted with any upgrade, the other being the far more useful flint and steel. Interestingly, in an attempt to balance this worthless stick, hoes seemingly do not lose durability when used in combat, but again, why bother when they just do the same amount of damage as just punching whatever's in front of you, on top of wasting a slot in your inventory in that case? That's not even going into the hilarity that hoes made out of more valuable materials like iron and diamonds do absolutely nothing better than the typical standard wooden variant, aside from maybe a few more uses, but considering that even the wood hoe can last a really long time, that's not much of an advantage to begin with. Word of advice to all Minecrafters, never waste your precious diamonds on a gardening hoe of all things. Anyone who has played a classic Castlevania knows how awful the Dagger is. Easily the most ineffective weapon in the original Castlevania titles, the Dagger pretty much serves as a you mad bro to anyone unlucky enough to stumble upon it. For starters, while the weapon has a very quick rate of fire, it also does very minimal damage, about as much as the weakest version of the default Vampire Killer Whip, meaning that anything the weapon doesn't one-shot will likely ram straight into you, sending you blasting off like Team Rocket. Secondly, unless you and your enemy are both standing on flat and equal ground, aiming the thing can be quite a pain. Considering the weapon fires in a completely straight direction at such a swift rate, it would have to be fired at just the right time to even have a chance at landing a hit on something like an Emperor Medusa head. That's not even mentioning how worthless trying to double and triple the thing is, considering that because of the weapon's quick rate of fire, the thing will probably vanish in an instant regardless. And to think, avid players go through hours of arduous trekking and journeying, feeling on top of the world with their triple holy waters and clocks, only to be unlucky enough to whip an unsuspecting Cadle and get completely demoted, losing all those hours of grinding just because they picked up this pathetic dagger. What? A dull and rusted blade. Kirby has copied a plethora of abilities throughout his many adventures, and the vast majority of them have helped greatly in his endeavors in Darkest Hours. This means that Ball Kirby from Kirby's Adventure has absolutely no excuse for being so clunky and horrible! This pin-headed ability pretty much robs any sense of control that the player may have with the game, and replaces it with a slippery, awkward, and annoying ability that has no right being associated with the franchise. Ball Kirby essentially turns the player into a walking, or in this case, bouncing pinball, ready to fly everywhere across the field except where you want to go. Another annoyance is how Ball doesn't have a projectile or melee attack accompanying it, essentially meaning you have to ram into enemies to get any sort of usage out of the Stress Ball. Combine that with the previously mentioned horrible controls, and you have a weapon that is not only worthless, but also potentially double-edged as well, with the side pointed towards the user being far more painful than the side pointed towards the enemies. How ironic for a supposedly round ball. Out of all of the weapons the Blue Bomber has collected in his gargantuan arsenal, which one sticks out as the bottom of the barrel? Most people would immediately point their Mega Busters straight at the likes of Top Spin, Spark Shock, Super Arm, Thunderwool, and Power Stone among other things. If you were to ask me though, I'd say the Time Stopper for Mega Man 2 is the ultimate level of suck in the weapon select screen. Advertised as being able to freeze time and halt enemies in their tracks, the Time Stopper initially seems to be a rather cool concept. Unfortunately, this weapon suffers from two major problems. One, you cannot attack when using this weapon. This effectively means that if you activate the weapon at the wrong time, you've pretty much doomed yourself for the duration the weapon is active, and you have no choice but to wait the move out. This leads into problem number 2. A full charge goes on for way too long considering the downsides the weapon has, and a single usage uses up all of the weapon's ammo with no way to conserve ammo for later. Because of this, someone using this weapon would have to be extra precise and fire it at just the right moment so that they can get the most out of their one-shot commentary. This greatly reduces the effectiveness of the weapon, as unlike other weapons, which allow for many uses as well as conserving ammo, the Time Stopper only permits one strike before running out of ammunition, greatly reducing the creativity and fun that could have been had with this weapon. Honestly, this flash may seem picture-worthy to an unsuspecting newbie, but there is no way I'm smiling for this camera. A key part of the fun factor of the Super Smash Bros. Franchise is the plethora of entertaining and salt-inducing toys at the player's disposal. While plenty of them are hilariously satisfying and loads of fun, the Smoke Ball on the other hand is anything but. Now what exactly makes this smoking peanut so groan-worthy? Let's start with the fact that the Smoke Ball unleashes blinding smoke that blocks the vision of everyone playing, including the person who threw the weapon in the first place. This essentially turns the weapon into a double-edged sword, as while it can be used to hide the player using the weapon or distract an opponent, at the same time, it can be really confusing as to where you go when you don't even know where you are. Funny thing though, while this trait may cause someone to believe that the weapon is a huge pain to deal with, in actuality, this bouncy ball is completely worthless! Considering the smoke only shows up in a small radius, chances are, unless players are playing in a really cramped stage, they're probably going to be miles away from all the smoke. Not only that, but if another player happens to pick up the smoke ball after it goes off, that pretty much serves as an indication that they're trying desperately to hide from other players, and trying poorly, seeing as how a moving stream of smoke pretty much serves as an indication that someone is hiding within. Now, the fact that the weapon serves as a hazard to the person using it may make some people question whether this power-up qualifies for this list. While I could understand someone disqualifying this power-up, I'm still going to count this double-edged sword, as it does still serve as a weapon to harm opponents. Overall, its range is terrible, it fails as a disguise, it's confusing and disorienting, it's just annoying and groan-worthy to everyone playing, and the fact that there's an even worse power-up than this speaks volumes about what I think about the last candidate on this list. I'm not going to do a dishonorable mentions this time. Let's just move on to number 1. Moves in the Pokemon franchise have been the main feature of battling as far back as the franchise has been around, and over the years, the quality and variety of moves has grown quite substantially. After thoroughly analyzing these moves to my fullest extent, I can safely conclude that, oh my goodness, Teleport is one of the worst things to plague the franchise to date! This mess of a weapon is an absolute pain no matter who decides to bear this obnoxious tool of the trade. It's annoying when enemies have it, it's pathetic when the player has it, and it's absolutely worthless both in and out of battle. So, where to begin with this dodgy mess of a move? How about we start with how infuriating it is to catch a wild Pokemon with this move? Considering the move is guaranteed to work when wild Pokemon use it starting with Pokemon 2, stacking a Pokemon with Teleport can be really infuriating if you don't have a means of landing a status ailment like Frozen or Sleep. Imagine, for instance, running into a shiny Abra after several wild encounters, ready to catch it after hunting for so long, and then, poof, it's gone in an instant and there's nothing you can do about it. Also, if you thought the move was any better in your hands, think again! For starters, the move doesn't even work in trainer battles, greatly stifling a lot of the usefulness that the move could have if it had any to begin with. But even in wild battles, the move pretty much serves as a replacement for simply fleeing from battle, which already isn't that hard to do to begin with, and even if it was, there exists not just an item, but also an ability that serves the exact same purpose that Teleport does, on top of allowing an extra slot for a much more powerful and useful move. Lastly, what about when the user is not battling? 4 words. Escape Rope Light Edition. Now, to be fair, Pokemon 7 did give Teleport a bit more use in the form of Z-Teleport, which fully restores the user's HP, but let's be real, would someone really waste an entire Z-move on Teleport of all moves, considering how otherwise useless the thing is, wasting an entire move and item slot purely for the equivalent of a slightly better Citrus Berry? I rest my case, and also this countdown. I'm the Blazing Larvesta, reminding you to never bring a plastic knife to a raid battle. However, there always has to be a rougher than diamond, and in this case, the Nemesis is Nemesis Nemesis Nemesis